Poverty elimination has been one of President Xi Jinping's most signature national policies since he took power in 2012. Then, in February 2021, in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic and the global economic downturn, President Xi Jinping declared China free of the menace called poverty. But the celebration wouldn't last for long. This is because even though eliminating extreme poverty is a great feat, the inability to deal with the root cause of poverty is greater defeat. Before we begin, make sure to click the like and subscribe buttons to stay updated with the latest videos. In the past few years, China has made good attempts to eliminate poverty among the people. Yet, the success of this drive has remained questionable. For some time now, and even longer than bargained, it has remained all over the news that China has lifted over 100 million people in its rural population out of poverty, an accomplishment called a complete victory, a miracle for humankind, and China's great contribution to the world by President Xi Jinping. Part of the credit was given to the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, because such tremendous success would not have been possible without the institutional advantage of the Chinese party-state political system. Without any shade of doubt, the poverty elimination policy was a mass mobilization campaign. This was not by sheer luck, but by strategy. In fact, since the mass-line media was developed during the Yan'an era, mass mobilization has been the Chinese Communist Party's key to success, ranging from its Civil War victory down to its management of the COVID-19 pandemic. Surprisingly, since the campaign started in 2015, the Chinese government has spent no less than $80 billion just to end poverty. Only recently, the government relocated millions of households from remote rural regions to new villages more suitable for economic development, constructed new roads, houses, and other infrastructure projects, and offered direct cash transfers. If that didn't shock you, this will. China went on to dispatch over 775,000 cadres to survey all rural families to determine which households were living in poverty. After that, the government paired each poor household with a cadre to monitor the poverty elimination process. The government did not do this alone, as many ordinary citizens also became involved in the campaign by donating money and goods to rural households and helping farmers to sell their products. The campaign even revived some old methods, such as sending medical workers to rural areas for checkups and treatments. This indeed improved the livelihood of numerous poor peasants in rural China. And this wasn't just on paper. Rural dwellers have attested to it in interviews, saying that they now have a good place to live and access to health care. Yet, despite the huge achievements, the campaign failed to address the root cause of rural poverty, the underdeveloped rural human capital. For years, poor rural education has plagued China. In fact, according to research, 63% of rural students drop out before graduating from high school. More so, the problem runs beyond schools. It includes malnutrition, health problems, and lack of early childhood development. In the rural communities, more than half of babies suffer from malnutrition, and over half of the children have retarded development, with an IQ lower than 90 because of a lack of early childhood education. Furthermore, 40% of school children in rural China have intestinal worms, and over 30% of the students in these rural communities have vision problems but do not have glasses. This stunning failure in human capital development has had serious negative impacts on China. And sadly, this will greatly affect the future of the country. Currently, 70% of the Chinese labor force not only have no high school education, but also lack the potential for human capital development. As a result, these workers are only suitable for labor-intensive jobs, such as assembly line workers, and cannot be retrained for higher value-adding jobs because of their impaired learning ability. Now, as China moves toward an innovation-driven economy and loses its comparative advantage for labor-intensive jobs to lower-income countries, it is sad to say that between 200 and 300 million working-age Chinese might become structurally unemployable. They will get left behind by the rapidly developing Chinese economy and soon fall into poverty, or deeper for those who are already poor. This high level of structural unemployment will lead to social chaos. Invariably, jobless working-age people will become dissatisfied with the status quo and demand changes. Their anger will become a ticking bomb for the regime, and soon it will be as though nothing was done concerning poverty eradication. Now, this is the biggest challenge, yet the Chinese government is not doing enough to address it. No doubt, the government has failed to realize that getting people out of poverty without giving them the capacity to stay afloat will only lead them deeper into wreck. The poverty elimination campaign primarily focuses on lifting poor households above the poverty line of 4,000 renminbi, which is about $619 per person per year, and providing basic needs such as food, housing, medical services, education, and housing. But in the blueprints, this wasn't the plan. The 2015 Central Committee and State Council decision to achieve victory in the poverty elimination campaign identified job training, migration, social welfare expansion, and business support as primary means to lift the rural population out of poverty. And yes, the decision also declared the expansion of central and local government spending on infrastructure constructions to expand networks of roads, electricity, and internet connections. But, contrary to this plan, the campaign did not focus on human capital development. Local cadres were not incentivized to improve rural education. In fact, in the Rural Revitalization Plan, only 1 out of 22 targets for local cadres relates to education. In addition, the plan labels this target as predictive rather than binding, implying that it is a soft target. It explains why cadres focus almost exclusively on infrastructure construction and providing material goods, as these targets are measurable and binding hard targets. Meanwhile, human capital development is ignored. Also, the existing rural education policy already creates a distortion because it focuses on quantity rather than quality. If you can recall, the 2015 decision calls for expanding secondary education by giving students who cannot attend academic high schools an alternative, which is enrolling them in newly constructed vocational high schools to receive professional job training. When it started, the government pledged to eliminate vocational school tuition and provide financial aid to the poorer students. It all sounded like a good plan until it was discovered that these students could not compete favorably with students from academic high schools. In fact, 91% of students from these vocational schools scored the same or worse in math exams after attending the school for a year, showing that these students are not learning at all. It is more frustrating to hear that these students are not even receiving proper job training in vocational high schools, as 56% of students spend their job training sessions working in low-level manufacturing. No doubt the low-quality education offered by vocational high schools will not develop China's rural human capital. Because despite receiving a high school diploma, these students will still face the future of structural unemployment. Those living in China can attest to it that the problem is not confined to vocational schools. According to China's top policy design, local governments are expected to maximize student enrollment in all levels of schooling. In the county socioeconomic statistics statement, which is another document measuring the progress of the Rural Revitalization Plan, only 2 out of 24 targets are about education. Sadly, these 2 targets are the numbers of students in elementary and middle schools. There is no doubt that secondary school enrollment is also a measurement for education policy implementation, which is why rural cadres are prompted to reach enrollment targets because they are measurable. It is easy for them to prove their competence by hitting these numerical targets quickly. However, they often disregard student outcomes because it is harder to measure. The core value of socialism has been defined as productivity development to achieve common prosperity. It is undeniable that China's poverty elimination campaign is a good step toward the idea of common prosperity. This is because the elimination of poverty symbolizes China's achievement of a moderately prosperous society, a goal generations of Chinese leaders fought to achieve to no avail. Now, even though there is a glimpse of hope in achieving this tremendous goal, it cannot be sustained without the development of the rural human capital. bringing the solution down to one loud, clear, and resounding theme: rural development, precisely human capital development. Without results in rural human capital development, the elimination of poverty in China will be fragile and temporary. As opportunities close because of China's slowing economic growth, finding low-skilled jobs will become increasingly difficult because the people do not have the capability to learn and upgrade their skill sets. Rural peasant workers will then find themselves stuck at the bottom rungs of the social ladder. And soon enough, they will find themselves deeper in poverty than ever before.